just putting a $10,000 hot tub in can on average raise your rates by $50 a night.
Wow.
And $50 a night over 200 nights over the course of a year, it's a 1-year payback period on that $10,000 investment. And then year 2, year 3, year 4, forget about it.
Yeah. So welcome to another episode of Small Town Famous. Today I have Darryl Medico, who is one of the owners of Stay Space. They are a short-term rental management company. And do you want to just tell us a little bit about that company?
Yeah, thank you. So one of the founded Stay Space, my wife and I, we co-own it, Ashley Medico. We primarily focus in on co-hosting, which is property management, as well as consulting and design is our top 3 focuses for the short-term rental space.
And so for people who don't fully know the picture of short-term rentals, I think of that obviously as Airbnb and VRBO, a place that you can look up online, you're finding it to rent for the weekend or maybe a couple weeks for a family vacation or something like that. And so you have had this company for how long?
Founded the company in 2020.
Okay.
Year of COVID.
Yes. Wow. When no one was doing anything. That must have been great. How was it at the beginning?
It was outstanding.
Yeah.
At the time, I was laid off. I had a great sales career, very successful career, individual contributor roles, later roles. I was laid off in 2020 because pipelines dried up, just world stopped. I had no fear of finding another job. My fear was consistently always looking over my shoulder in a sales role. And I think most salespeople will be able to relate to that. It's like, you're only as good as your most recent number. So I said, I want to stop building for other people. I want to build for me. Mm-hmm. It started, I wanted to build a side hustle. And then my side hustle became a passion. And then it just took off to what we have today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so you will help people find short-term rentals in New Hampshire, in New England. What's your primary market?
Yeah, so New England, Stay Space is a short-term, rental management company, design consulting, primarily for New England, but beyond. We have some clients that take us outside of New England. Mm-hmm. We have some clients in upstate New York, in North Carolina. I have clients that are looking at places internationally. I have clients that are looking at places in Utah and Colorado. They love skiing. So we can do this anywhere, but it is primarily New England. And, we'll help clients identify, run pro formas, make sure that the deal makes sense, and just make sure that it's a good market for short-term rentals before they even start to look into that market.
And how can you tell if it's a good market for short-term rentals?
Yeah. So primarily, I always say this. One of the first questions I'll get asked from most people is, well, what's a good market? Mm-hmm. Tell me, Darryl, what's a good market? What's the market? And the first thing I'll say is, well, where do you want to go? If it's your first rental, unless you're buying it purely for investment, which most don't, right? Most are like, I kind of want to go there.
Partially enjoyment.
Yeah, right? So unless it's for purely investment, I first say, well, where do you want to go? Tell me about yourself. Are you a young couple? You have a family? You have an older family, younger family? And then once I know that, I'll say, okay, well, based upon what you've told me, here in New England, here in New Hampshire, here's where you probably would want to go, right? So in New Hampshire, it's, we're a smaller state. So, it's the mountains, it's the lakes, it's the beach. Mm-hmm. It's typically the top 3. And in those markets, Lincoln for Loon Mountain up in that direction, Woodstock, in the Mount Washington Valley, Bartlett, North Conway, Intervale, Glen, some really good towns in there. Mm-hmm. Lakes region, Winnipesaukee, Sunapee. Yeah. All the little smaller lakes, they can do a bang-up job for a property. And the beach, Hampton.
Yeah, absolutely. My family has had a timeshare up in North Conway since before I was born. And so every summer, the last week of July, we always went up there. It's actually in Intervale at Cathedral Ledge. And I've always loved going up there. But now that I have my own family, my husband and I will look on Airbnb and stuff. We're like, wait, this one's so much nicer. Because now when you look for short-term properties, I'm sure that we'll get into this, but as a family, you're looking for certain amenities. Like if I can be walkable to some water for my kids and be walkable to like a bakery to get breakfast and have a foosball table or something else to entertain them while we're there rather than just a shell of a home with a couple couches. It's so much more advantageous for me to pay a little bit more for that than it is for, the older kind of boring timeshares or hotels that are available.
You said it well. When I started in the business in 2020, professionally, we had a family home going back to 2017. Mm-hmm. But professionally, when I started in the business, especially coming out of COVID, you could put anything up on Airbnb. You could put up, literally an outhouse and it probably would rent.
Yeah, everyone was fleeing Boston.
They were fleeing
They
Boston.
just needed a space to go.
Yes, they were fleeing Boston, fleeing New York, all the above. And it was the end of 2020, all of 21, all of 22, golden years of Airbnb. And I can talk about, we'll probably get into it, like how that creates some challenges now for investors.
Yeah.
Because now there's this level of expectation of what properties should do based upon past performance. That was cyclical. That was the peak of the market. There will be an event that will get us back there one day, but we're not there now. And the game has changed. So, we found, in 21, 22, phenomenal years. We didn't have our systems super tight as they are now. They were good, but not as they are now. And we were renting like crazy, everywhere, all markets, making a lot of money. And then now you have to do all the things that you just mentioned. It's like table stakes. You got to have killer design, killer amenities, killer location, or some variation of that. And if you don't, then you're going to struggle.
Right.
That's one of the biggest things that I see.
Okay. So some of the clients that you started with when you first began this journey, have they added things to their home in order to get higher rental rates?
Smart ones. Yeah. We have some clients that they require a little more coaxing. I have a phenomenal client. And if you watch this, you'll probably know exactly who he is. He's almost like family, right? Because he was one of my first clients. Yeah. And I've consistently said, hey, you need to do this. You need to invest more. A big one was a hot tub. I'm like, just putting a $10,000 hot tub in can, on average, raise your rates by $50 a night.
Wow.
And $50 a night over 200 nights over the course of a year, it's a 1-year payback period on that $10,000 investment. And then year 2, year 3, year 4, forget about it.
Yeah.
Right? And it took some work to get him to come around to that idea. Now he has. And he's seeing the value of it. He's like, oh, wow, my rates have shot up and I'm getting better reviews.
Because of the hot tub. My husband, Kendall, he will only rent places with hot tubs. So that's funny. We have one at our house that we almost never use. But if we ever rent an Airbnb, it has to have a hot tub to the point where he'll check off the box, that it needs to have a hot tub. So I'll be looking at all these places. I'm like, oh my God, there's so many nice options. He's like, there's no hot tub. We're not going to that. But that's great. That's a smart amenity to do.
It's an easy one. It is a big chunk of change. And there's usually a lot of fear around hot tubs too. Because it's like, oh, well,
you don't understand how to fix them.
How do I fix it? How do I maintain water quality? You just need good contractor. You need good people. I know how to balance a hot tub. I know what to do. I've never done it myself.
Okay.
I know what to do. I've read up on it and I know how to advise, but I've never actually done it because I've got people that will do it for me.
Yeah, exactly. And do most people who own a short-term rental have a company who comes in between and professionally cleans it, or do you have clients who do that themselves?
I don't have any clients that will do that themselves. The clients that we partner with, we'll do best of breed, best of service. And we've had clients say, what if I clean it myself? And it's not advisable. So
not worth one bad review, right?
100%. So, you can hire a cleaning company or a cleaner to manage that for you, or you can clean it yourself. In those times of question, I would say, what is your time worth?
Right.
So let's not be a penny wise and a pound foolish. So most people that we work with are high income W-2 earners. They're entrepreneurs. They value their time with their family. They value their time in their business.
They don't want to scrub the toilet from someone else's.
And even if they say they do, once I ask them, like, what's your bread and butter? Like, what do you know really well? Someone says, I know football really well. Okay, great. If I were to hire you to teach me football, to be a better quarterback, lineman, defensive back, whatever, how much would you charge me? And usually those numbers are 50, 75, 100, 150 an hour minimum, right? Your cleaner's probably $40 an hour.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are you doing?
Wasting time.
Yeah. Spend more time. If that's your thing, spend more time doing that. So I highly recommend getting specialized because so there's that reason. And then if you get a good cleaner or a good contractor, now it's specialized help. They know what they're doing. They should put good systems and good processes in place to make sure you hold them accountable. And that's magic. Because
they have it run itself. And what mistakes do you see people make with short-term rentals?
There's a lot. So you can go on to Airbnb as you've done. You can go on Airbnb today, and anyone can. And you can look at about 80% of the listings, the old 80-20 rule. You can look at about 80% of the listings, certainly the vast majority, they all look the same. Typically what you'll see is mismatched furniture. Think about it. It's like, oh, that's just the rental. Just, put grandma's old furniture in there. And found something on Facebook. Exactly. We see that all the time, right? Or I built this. I built it myself. Put it, we're like, oh boy, here we go. And it doesn't have a flow. It doesn't have a theme. It's just kind of all over the place. That's a huge one. But you can go on to Airbnb, you'll see this. You'll see photos with their cell phone camera. I mean, you just bought a $500,000 to $1 million plus investment. Pay the $500, $800 and get professional photos one time.
Yeah.
And professional hospitality photos are not MLS photos. There's a huge difference. The big thing in this business right now, what they call lifestyle shots, action shots, which means actually put a model in your shot, showing them enjoying the hot tub or the fireplace, or, put some food out on the table, having a coffee overlooking the view. It puts the potential guest into that place. And you imagine they're looking at 4 properties for their vacation. And of those 4, 3 are, good photos, but maybe standard. And then 1 has action shots, lifestyle shots. It's like, I can see myself there.
Yeah, you put emotion into it.
100%. So there's that. Poor copy, the way the descriptions are written, how it's written, on the listing. It's a review-based business.
Yeah.
You need to nail your reviews every single time. That's one thing I'm super proud of with Stay Space. We have over 4,000 reviews just on my profile alone. We have multiple profiles that we manage. Across those 4,000 reviews, our average review score is 4.95.
Wow.
It's insane.
That's amazing.
It is. I look at that and I look at competitors and colleagues that run different businesses, right? I look at their, across the nation, across the world. It's difficult to maintain that. And we're doing a great job with that. That's one thing I'm really proud of with my team. I can't take much credit for that. That's the team that I have behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think going back to the copy, like you said, setting expectations up front so that people know what to expect. Your property doesn't have to be perfect, but
Correct.
If you, give an honest description of what the property is, then people know what to expect based on their budget.
It's a great point. Really good point, actually. I'm glad you brought that up because we see it often that when I go to take over for a client, they will make their property to look outstanding with the photos. We saw one actually the other day where potential client, we haven't spoken to them yet, but we're reaching out on a cold basis to see if they're interested in partnering up. And one of the reviews was beautiful property, but the pictures don't show the house literally like 1 foot away. And I look at the photos and it makes it look like it's this private ocean view on the cliffs of Maine overlooking, and it's beautiful, but now people show up and they're not expecting that house.
Right.
So we got several properties in more urban areas and maybe in apartment buildings. And we'll say specifically, you're in an apartment building, you should expect some noise, you're downtown, you should expect street noise. Yeah. Like this is going to happen. And again, that was a learning lesson for not doing it right in the beginning because I would try to be perfect when I first got going. And then you start to get some complaints. Then you have to manage the complaint. And it's like, well, rather than fix the person, let me fix the process.
Right.
I messed something up when I did this. And that's one thing that we learned.
Yeah. I think as a consumer, one thing that I wish that a lot more short-term rentals had is a floor plan. Because I have younger kids and I travel with a lot of families with little kids. And a lot of times it'll say 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom, but I won't know from the photos that a couple are upstairs and a couple are downstairs. And when the master's upstairs and then the little kids are stuck downstairs and I'm in an area that I'm not super familiar with, it's just not comfortable. But most of them just don't have that. Or even in the description, it won't say that the bedrooms are on separate floors. That's my biggest challenge.
It's a real one. And the floor plans aren't super difficult to pull together. So if you're able to do it, do it. And I would give this as feedback to listeners around on the guest side of things, reach out to your host.
Yeah.
Right. Always, like, if you have any questions, reach out to your host. And it's actually a really good indication on the guest side, the level of service that you're going to get, how quickly they respond, the types of responses they give you. Because at the end of the day, Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, all these OTAs, online travel agencies, they're all marketplaces. They're just bringing, a seller with a buyer. That's it. So there is a level of inconsistency. And in order both as a guest and as a host to make sure that you're getting a consistent guest or a consistent product on the host side, or if you're traveling as a guest, start that communication early. One of the things that we'll do internally, and I recommend this to people who want to self-manage, is if you're going to self-manage, hold yourself to a high standard of response time. This comes from my days back when I was in technology sales. Most contracts will have for like software or hardware, they'll have what they call a service level agreement, an SLA. And all that is that we're going to do something in a specific period of time. So I took that with me because I saw how well that really worked in the software space. And I took it with me to this line of work. And I tell our internal team, our operations team, you have 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to get back to the guest. Now, you don't have to get back with an answer because you may not be able to get a complex answer in 5 minutes, but you're going to get back to them and say, I got your request and I'll into it for you.
It's like, think of it as if you're the owner, what level of service would you want? Would you expect?
Exactly.
So putting yourself on the other side of it.
Yep.
Where do you have an area that you feel like you know it in and out and you absolutely specialize in it? Or do you think it's all of New England?
Yeah. I mean, the favorite areas definitely for our team would be the Mount Washington Valley. We have a good handle on regulation and contractor relationships and, property values and rental rates. Definitely in that area. That was one of my first markets when I started the business. And it was the market that we began in as a family in 2017. So got a good handle on that particular market. That market, we've got several rentals in the Lincoln market, and it's not too far off the beaten path from Mount Washington Valley.
Absolutely.
So there's different regulations. Lincoln's a little bit different than North Conway in terms of how they view short-term rentals. So there's some things you need to have on the ground for those reasons, but we know those markets well.
You can tell that the demand has gone up so much in Lincoln. I'm sure you've seen that whole development that they're doing of the $2.5 to $3 million lodges that are unbelievable.
Stunning. Stunning. I love when I see, and I think some people get frightened by this. I love when I see hotels being built. I love when I see, like true development, coming to an area that I'm either managing in or interested in managing in, or maybe potentially buying in. And the reason why I love it so much is that there's people who are much smarter than me who spend a lot more time looking at data that before they go into making these projects happen, they're going to make sure they're sustainable and that they're going to make money. So I think one of the buzzwords that we hear right now across the country is saturation, right? Oh, I don't, it's so saturated in that market. I love saturation. I just have to have a better mousetrap.
Yeah.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Because I know that the guests are coming.
Yeah.
I just have to be that much better than the rest of the market. And it's not nothing crazy. I just have to do all the little things just a little bit better. And I'm going to capture that market share.
What do you think are little things that owners can do to make their properties better?
I mean, so kind of how we started the conversation, right? I mean, gone is the days of just throwing up a house on Airbnb with your cell phone, right? Really basic, stuff right out of the gate is, treat it like a business, number one, right? And, put time for the professional photos, the professional copy, invest into back-end infrastructure, back-end software, right? You're going to want a pricing tool, an algorithm tool. You're going to want tools for your cleaners, right? You want a quality control process for them. So you're going to want a housekeeping tool that will manage inventory, that will manage payments, that will manage check-ins and checkouts, and have that as automated as possible. The response times, being hospitality centric, it's a difficult business. It's not as passive as some might think or hope that it is. So you have to understand that you can automate a lot, but at the end of the day, you need to provide a hospitality experience to a person. And that person is not booking a home. That person is booking memories, right? Yeah. And they could be in town for vacation. They could be in town for work. They could be in town for a funeral, right? You give them a comfortable space and be as hospitable as possible.
Yeah, I love that. So you're helping everyone make it as automated as possible so that they can have it be as passive as possible.
As passive as possible, yeah. But understand that if you're going to self-manage, that you will have to have some level of hand in the day-to-day. Unless you have a vision of growing larger with multiple rentals, then there's ways to put people into the seats to do what you would be doing. But you still have to train them and oversee them and make sure they're doing their job.
Most people, I would imagine, just have a couple short-term rentals here and there.
Yep. Usually the breaking point for a self-manager is going to be somewhere around 5 or so properties. Once you get to that 5th property, it's now to a point where you should be thinking about either putting systems and processes in place at a higher level, similar to a management company, or hiring a management company to handle it for you.
I have 5 rental properties, so I'm a landlord, not short-term, but long-term rentals. And I can tell you that 5 is my threshold.
Yep.
I absolutely do not want to do this anymore.
I know so little about the long-term game. I know more about the short-term, obviously, but I've heard the same thing.
Yeah, just more financial implications, I think, as far as trusting someone to, be able to do what they sign on to be able to do for a long-term, long period of time. So, yeah. What I think one of the big things that we have a lot of friends that have a second home. And a lot of people that I've spoken to are almost afraid to turn it into a short-term rental, even though they barely use it, just because they don't understand what's involved in that process. And maybe they're afraid, like, what if, it's my mattress? I don't want people sleeping in my mattress, or I don't want people touching my cooking utensils and things like that. So do you just have like some advice for those types of people that are considering taking their second home and potentially adding some weekends available for short-term rentals?
Yeah. I start with, for every complex question on whenever it comes to advice, I start with, typically with most conversations, what's your goal? Right? So, are you in a position where if you don't do this, you're going to lose the home and you don't want to lose the home? Are you in a position where you're just like, well, it's just sitting, it'd be nice to make a little bit extra money, right? What's the goal? So certainly start there. Generally speaking, once you start welcoming people into your home, right, you need to understand that you are changing up its utilization. So in your mind, you have to be, and I've heard this before, it's like, oh, well, that's my mattress. I've heard exactly that, right? And I've heard, oh, I don't know what they're going to do in my home and what are they doing while they're there?
You have to disassociate.
Completely, because I could probably write a book on the interesting stories in this business too.
I can only imagine.
So you have to understand that going into it, but then just put really good systems and processes in place to make yourself feel more comfortable. So there's some great technology out there for hardware. Obviously, we know about Ring cameras. I think everyone knows those pretty well. Put those on the exterior of the property. You can never put a camera on the interior of the property. I don't really know why anyone would want to do that. I have no desire to know what's going on inside my properties when people are there. But on the exterior, you know who's coming and who's going. You know how many cars are parked. You know how many people are walking in. Is it 1 a.m. and they're holding a keg over their head and like, oh God, the biggest fears that you could possibly have, right? You have a camera to hopefully alleviate that. Then there's great tools out there, noise sensors. Minute makes a noise sensor. Noise Aware makes a noise sensor. I like both. We use both in our properties. I like Minute a little bit better because in addition to the noise sensing technology, it's just decibel meters. So it just says like if at 9 o'clock at night it goes to 80 decibels, well, there's a party spinning up. So you should probably shut that down and you'll get notified on your phone. So, but for Minute, they actually have, and I think Noise Aware is working on it too, they have smoke detection. So cigarette smoke and marijuana smoke.
Oh, okay.
So it'll actually notify you that, hey, there's smoke detection inside your property. We put these inside of our properties that we manage for hosts, or for owners rather, because it just gives us more tools in the tool bag to be able to manage the guest. A Wi-Fi enabled lock. That way, worst case scenario, you get the worst guest ever and you want to cancel their reservation. Big note here on this one. This is a very important thing to say. You're not a tenant when you are a guest at a short-term rental. So if I can say one thing to the group who's watching right now, I'm going to look at the camera for this one. Never call your short-term rental guests a tenant. Don't do it. Don't say it. If God forbid you have to call the police, just don't use the word tenant. The reason is that they're not tenants. They don't fall under tenancy. They're short-term rental guests that have a short-term rental contract. So you are not evicting them. Don't use that word either. You are canceling their short-term rental agreement. And now they are trespassing. Huge differences. Huge differences. So you got to really make sure that you do that right if God forbid something like that comes up. But if you want to cancel their reservation and you want to trespass them and you look at your camera and they stepped out of the property and there's no one in right now, cancel the Wi-Fi code on the lock. Can't get back in.
Oh my God. Have you had a lot of different nightmares happen at properties?
Not a lot.
No,
definitely not. I think that's important for someone to know who might be watching this, right? Is like, I mean, I just said earlier, 4,000 reviews. We've had maybe another 1,000 or so travelers, right, or reservations. And then we're talking at this point, tens of thousands of actual individual people, right? Because in 4,000 reviews, we're probably talking on average a 4-guest minimum. So yeah, we're getting up there. No, I mean, vast majority of the time, 95% of the guests are outstanding. They're really great people, very, understanding even when there's issues and challenges. Most know that, he's working his hardest right now,
You get it.
5%, we get some fun stories.
Can't only imagine.
I mean, never anything that wasn't fixable, never anything that was, major, like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Right. Nothing ever like that. But yeah, there's a couple
Yeah,
good ones.
it's a big thing to be trusting someone else to take care of your home as if you were there.
The way that we've averted most of that is, we have all that technology that we talked about, but also being transparent to where the properties and location and all that we talked about earlier. We put right in all of our listings that we've got all of this technology in place.
Right. I was going to say, let them know you have the smoke detector, you have the noise decibel meter reader so that people aren't doing whatever they want when they're there. They're going to have to be respectful because they know they're being monitored.
Yes. Yep. We have, and I teach this on the consulting side of things too. We have a list of, little red flags that might pop up. And then we have scripting on how to deal with that, right? Because I'm not doing all the messaging like I used to anymore.
Yeah.
That best practice in my mind that I've learned and implemented, I had to put that in a position where we could replicate it across multiple operations specialists that operate on our shifts now. So we just hand those documents out. So it goes into our process index. And then we just say, if you see this in a message or if you hear this in a message, here's the scripting that you should follow to dig in deeper and make sure that this person's acting with good faith and they're going to be a good guest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember when Kendall and I were getting married about 10 years ago, we were looking for an Airbnb in the Gloucester area. We figured maybe we would do an Airbnb because we knew we wanted to have a small wedding and do it at like a house, and then the bridal party could get ready at the house and stuff like that. And I tried so hard to find one, and every single owner was like, absolutely not, absolutely not, absolutely not. But I was glad that I was transparent upfront about what I was going to use it for, because I could have easily just said I wanted it for the night and then performed a wedding ceremony there and gotten in trouble.
Yeah, don't do that. If you're a guest, don't do that. Good on the owners, or good on you really, to bring it up. Interesting, we have several rentals in Gloucester actually now. I keep tabs of that market. Most hosts, very seasonal in that market, as you can imagine, but most hosts don't put out the technology that we put out. And if you don't, you wouldn't know that something's happening until a neighbor complains or something worse. You get a call from a police officer. You don't want to be that host. We see the communities across the nation, even here in New Hampshire, in the region, that are troubled by short-term rentals. I don't dismiss their concerns. As a professional host, I love preaching the word of be responsible, be a responsible host. Put these devices in place. Make sure your guests are coming in town for good reasons. I can't tell you the amount of times. So I talked earlier about how 5% of our guests roughly are we've had challenges with. I can't tell you, if we didn't do our job the way we're supposed to, the amount of times that we could have had a little bit more. Right.
Yeah.
Just
absolutely.
because we've asked questions and, the story didn't add up, or, how many people and what are you doing in town? Yeah. All that. And we just said no.
Yeah.
For my clients, I tell them, like, I don't know about you, but I don't need the money that bad.
Right.
And I'm not going to put your property in a position where I'm concerned, on the low end of level of being concerned. I'm not going to put you in a position where, we'll have damage or neighbors upset. And that's a best case scenario. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not even going to, we're not going to allow them to stay.
I feel like as an owner of a short-term rental too, it probably makes you just feel better in general if your neighbors know upfront what your plan is with it. And if you let them know, hey, I have the smoke reader, I have the noise decibel reader. We're not trying to make this a nuisance for you. We're just, that we use this as a business, and we're going to be as respectful as we can.
Yeah. You're definitely 100% correct. We've got some properties that we manage in Kittery, Maine, and the driveway is an easement, right? So at the end of the driveway, it's the condo association that owns the driveway, right? It's over by four sides, and it's a small old fisherman's village. So, parking was just like, we really had to work on parking there. Guests couldn't figure out, they didn't know where to park. So what we did is we put better scripting in place so that guests knew what they were doing. We put cameras on the exterior that could cover all angles of the driveway, so we knew what was going on. And then I went to every neighbor at the end of that condo association. And at the time, I didn't have my team that I have today. I said, here's my card, here's my phone number, here's my email address. You can text me any time of night. If someone's parked where they're not supposed to, reach out to me.
Do you still get those?
I don't, God, no. But what we found was they were extremely appreciative, right? So any concerns they had, they were like, and then I walked them through. I actually gave them a tour of the property. I'm like, here's the noise sensor. Here's what it does. Here's where my cameras are located. Here's why those are in place. And once we did that for the neighbor with that level of transparency, they felt better. And our scripting was good. So most guests figured out this is where to park, where not to park. And the times that they couldn't figure it out, they didn't call the police. They didn't go knock on the neighbors or on the guests and, make a big scene.
Yeah.
They just reached out to me and then I took care of it. I said, thank you for letting me know. I'll take care of it.
There you go.
It was all set.
So I have a TikTok for my real estate business. And whenever I talk about short-term rentals, the biggest backlash I get is from buyers who are trying to buy their primary residence, and they're pissed because if they want to live in the Lakes region or if they want to live in the White Mountains, they cannot afford a house. And in their minds, it's because all of these investors are buying those same properties for short-term rentals. So that is the biggest pushback that I get on ever dealing with short-term rentals. What is your opinion on that?
I mean, we could have probably a whole symposium, you and I, about this whole thing together and try to win over the world. In my time of looking into this business and being, around it, I think we could all agree that, it's not just short-term rentals that are driving up rates,
right.
In any market, including vacation markets. So, first and foremost, I would say, yeah, maybe it's not helping, right? I get it, but it's not the only thing that's driving up rates. For once acknowledging that, right, there's certain spots that, again, smart investors are going to be looking at versus other spots. And yeah, if you're looking to buy waterfront on Lake Winnipesaukee, there's going to be a high demand for that. For people who want just for personal use and who want to potentially make it as a short-term rental. If you're looking something waterfront on a small pond or lake near Lake Winnipesaukee, you're not going to have that same level of demand on the short-term space. And I'll also say too, is that last quarter, Q4, so not Q1 of this year, but Q4 of 2024 was the first quarter since COVID where the inventory of short-term rentals that are being added to the OTAs has gone down.
Oh, wow.
So
that's interesting. Do you think that's because people are selling them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They're either selling or they're just taking them off the market because it's not worth.
It's not lucrative.
Yeah, it's not lucrative enough, right? So, and that's because of the demand that we saw coming out of those peak years, right? So, prior to 2020, I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, like I knew about Airbnb and I traveled maybe with it a couple times, and we had the one property, that the family owned, but I mean, it wasn't anything that was super on my radar. It was like, oh yeah, that's, you get to rent your home out. And then, I got into it professionally in 2020. And then I was able to witness what happened with that. First, it was the traveler demand. And then you had individual investors, maybe some partnership groups, equity come into the space because now it's like, look at the revenue in this. Oh my goodness. And you had a lot of green people in this industry who were like, oh, this is just, it's going to stay like this. Like, this is how it always is. And so you had people 22, 23, beginning of 24 even, that were searching for properties as short-term rentals. They were utilizing revenue numbers from the golden years. They were buying at an inflated rate because of an emotional purchase, maybe in a bidding war, plus high rising interest rates. Now they're getting in this position where even if they had a good pro forma, which most don't, now they were in a position where those numbers were super, super tight. And they're like, oh, I'll make it work because I'm looking at revenue numbers from 22 and 23. Yeah. The person selling most likely saw that we're on the back end of this and just said, yeah, here's my revenue numbers from 23. Take a look, and oh, this looks great as a buyer. This is awesome. They come in and unfortunately put themselves in a position where it's like, ooh, this isn't making the money I thought it was going to make. Right. I'm going to pull this off. I'm potentially going to sell it. So we're definitely coming. Here's my prediction now. This is not a fact. This is my prediction over the next, 4 to 6 quarters. We're going to continue to see properties come offline. We'll continue to see inventory come down. Traveler demand has not changed. Traveler demand has actually gone up. But because the inventory count has gone up so much, that's why, if you're currently renting today, you're probably feeling a little bit of a squeeze. It's because there's just a lot of inventory out there. And if you haven't raised your rates or you haven't raised your standards, then you haven't been able to raise your rates. You're not maintaining for your inflation. So we're going to continue to see properties come off the OTAs, off of Airbnb, off Vrbo. As that happens, I believe that the better operators are going to continue to maintain. And then as it happens deeper and deeper, then those operators are going to flourish more and more.
Right.
And I believe that's going to take about, a year and a half to 2 years at the most.
So interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've ever told you, but we had a short-term rental. Did I tell you this in Orlando?
I didn't know that.
We only owned it for 6 months, so it didn't go well. We bought at the very beginning of 2022, and we were so excited because we thought of this as we love going to Orlando with our kids, so we'll go sometimes, and when we're not using it, it'll be a business, which I don't think is really a great idea. I think you should either have it as a vacation home or a business, but that's my opinion. So we bought it, and it was at the height of when everyone was going to Orlando because it was still part of COVID. And right after we bought it, the interest rate skyrocketed, and the prices in Orlando stabilized very quickly and then started going down. And when we bought it, it was just kind of a boring place. And as you have explained, you need to do certain things and add the bells and whistles to make it exciting because there's 8,000 places that look exactly the same in the city of Orlando. And so we started doing all these renovations. We made like an Elsa room and a Mickey Mouse room and a foosball game room thing. There was so much money getting put into this, and we could see how quickly the prices were stabilizing and that it wasn't being rented out as much as we really needed it to. So the numbers were so tight, and we were like, never mind, just sell it. We sold it and made a small profit enough to cover everything we had paid in, thank God. But it's not for the weak. You have to look at this as a really long-term, investment and be willing to take the dips in the market and take the highs and lows and seasonality of it. So.
Yeah. It's a buy and hold strategy. It really is in the short-term space. I have a calculator, and anyone that sees this podcast, certainly reach out to me and, ask my calculator. Happy to share it. But I've got a calculator, and, on average, I'm just looking for deals that are going to do a 20% cash on cash return.
Yeah.
No less than that. And those were easier to find in 21 and even the beginning of 22. They're not impossible, but they're difficult to find now. We just bought a property in 23 up in Maine, and that one's just doing outstanding for us. There's some great deals in the areas around North Conway, Bartlett, Glen, Intervale, in Lincoln, lakes, beaches. They're tough to make work. They're sometimes so seasonal, number one. And number two, you just a higher premium for anything that's near the water.
Yeah, right.
So if I'm being completely honest, I really wanted a lakefront, instead of what we purchased in 23. I just couldn't make the numbers work. Mm-hmm. And I'll share this too. I had probably put offers on about 20 to 40 properties. And I can't say the amount of times that, the listing agent, the seller's agent would come back and say, oh, you're $40,000 off. You're not even close. You're 50 off. Do you want to come up a little bit? Nope.
If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense.
Didn't make sense. Yeah. Ashley and I had one property that we looked at. It was on Lock Lake. It was pretty much turnkey. It was really nice. And I think she even said to me, she's like, I like this. Let's do it. Right. I'm like, all right, well, let's go back home. And, we went to an open house, and the open house was packed. So I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And I went back home. I did the numbers on it, and I came in $50,000 less than they're asking. That was my offer. And seller's agent said, it's just not going to work. I've got, nothing less than asking. I said, not for me.
It's so hard to not be emotional. Good
it
for
is.
You.
It's very
hard. Was Ashley mad?
Oh, no, she was very good about it. And I think I probably want it just as much as her, right? Yeah. I liked it just as much.
Just only at a certain price.
The primary goal of the property, and that's why I say start with goals. Mm-hmm. The goal of the property was for investment. It wasn't for a place for us to go and spend our summers. So knowing that, it's like, that's my number. I'm stopping there. That's it. Now, if my goal was I want to get away with my family every summer, or I want to have a place to ski every winter, and the goal is not for investment, changes the game, changes it completely. So that's why, number one thing, when you're searching and you're getting going in this business, why are you getting in this business?
Interesting. Your place that you personally have in Maine, do you feel like it outperforms similar rentals in the area?
By a lot.
And why do you think that is?
Ashley.
Just sprinkles love.
I mean, we have a phenomenal view. I mean, the view, in my opinion.
I've seen the photos. It looks amazing.
Thank you. The view, in my opinion, is the best in Maine. Dare I say the best in New England? I don't know. Maybe not. But for those that, just to give you the description of it, it's west facing. It looks into a mountain range, mm-hmm. and beneath the mountain range is another small little hill that feeds into a lake. Mm-hmm. So you get your sunsets behind mountains, behind this little hill, behind the water. And it's breathtaking. So that doesn't hurt, but I knew that buying it, I was buying it less for, it's only a 3. And there's properties that are relatively the same price that are 4 bedrooms, 5 bedrooms. So I didn't buy it for the bedroom count. I bought it for that view. And then we went in and it was largely turnkey. We could show and share pictures that most people would say, and I think including, Ashley's mother even said, it's like, why are you guys putting so much money into this? This is beautiful. Like, because we know the secret sauce. So we beefed up the fire pit, made it much nicer. We put the hot tub in. We took a storage room in the basement and we created a movie theater out of it.
You never know the weather you're going to get in Maine.
Exactly.
It's nice to have a movie theater.
Yes. And then Ashley, she just went absolutely crazy with the design to the point where she sends me a picture. I think she was at Home Goods or Home Sense or one of the homes. I don't know which one. And she sends me a picture and she says, I want to buy this. And then the picture came through. Mm-hmm. It was a gondola. Like a full, you can actually walk into it, right? Like they have this thing sitting in the middle of Home Sense. And then she gives me the price. I'm like, what? Like, what's this gondola for? Like, we can put that money into something else. And I'm like, how am I even going to get up there? My mind is spinning on this. And she's just like, I'm just going to buy it. I'm like, all right, buy it. And that's usually how it goes. And then we moved the gondola up to the house. I almost broke my pinky like 4 times. And then I had to break it down. I had to set it back up. We got it in there. But it's the Instagram-worthy space.
I was going to say, everyone probably takes their Instagram photos there, and it became worth it.
Yes. Yes. So she's got the eye for it. She nailed it, knocked it out of the park. So we have that. It's the first thing you see when you walk into our mudroom. Mm-hmm. And the mudroom is a mudroom. But you see this gondola, and it sets the tone for the vacation.
I love that.
And then you walk into this living room, and we changed a ton up in there that, most people, I don't think you would do it because it was nice before. But now it's at a whole different level. And that particular property, the average 3.3 in the market does about $75,000 a year in revenue. You can get this information on AirDNA. It's one of the tools that we use to look at data. So a 3.3 in this market on average is $75,000. We completed our first year in 2024. We did $150,000 of revenue.
Wow.
We doubled the average.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's design, it's the systems in the back end, but you can have the best systems in the world. You need to have a marketing product. Mm-hmm. So
you can't have a boring product.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's the design, it's the amenities, it's the capturing the guest attention with those items.
That's amazing. Okay. So for people who are considering buying a short-term rental, do you have any background on kind of what financing options are available for them? Or would you be willing to go through the initial numbers with them and then we help them find someone who can figure out the financing piece and help them figure out if the budget works? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. So I will preface my answer first with, I am not a licensed mortgage broker. I am not a licensed accountant. I'm not a CPA. So take this as informational only, right? And consult your CPA, mortgage broker, people who are better equipped to answer it than me. I can answer it from more layman terms of what I've seen and what I've done personally. So to answer your question, always happy to run numbers and go over a pro forma for clients, right? And make sure they're getting into a good deal. I'm happy to hop on a 30-minute phone call and share, here's how I look at deals, give some information, some tools to someone so that way they're able to do their own. And then if something bubbles up where it's like, ooh, I really like this one, then we can go deeper together. Right. I'm always happy to do that. So when we look at financing products, I have a few people that I work with that I would recommend for that. And then, I think just generally speaking, of course you have, your conventional home loans. There's some really good loans out there for second homes. The one that we picked up for our second home was a 10% down product, no PMI, no points. It's structured as a 30-year fixed. You just have to refinance in 15 years because in 15, you're going to hit with a balloon payment, which I'm going to refinance in 15 years or I'll sell it, right? So, and that didn't concern me. So it was a really great product.
That's interesting because I actually think that most people assume that for your second home, you have to put 20 or 25% down. So that's amazing that you're able to do the 10%.
Yes.
With no PMI.
Correct. I don't know if that particular institution is still offering it or not, but if anyone's interested, reach out to me. But sometimes they do have PMI, sometimes they don't. This one did not. That was I was thrilled by that. I'm like 10%, no PMI. So and then, a 30-year period on it too. Interest rate was a little bit higher, as you can imagine, but as long as it cash flows, I'm betting on, especially when I bought it, I was betting on rates coming down, not going up. So I'm going to buy now at a better purchase price because when those rates come down, what I just bought that property for is probably going to go up in value. It's going to go up in asking price.
monthly payment will go down.
Exactly. So it can only get better from here from a cash flow perspective. So you get your conventional products, you have your second home products. One that a lot of people don't know about is a DSCR product. Okay. So a debt service coverage ratio product. Mm-hmm. And it's more similar to a commercial loan in which you don't even have to show income history, W-2 history. It's literally just showing that I believe the property is going to make X amount of dollars in revenue. Here's where I got my information. It's going to go through an underwriting process. I'm sure with the bank, they're going to make sure that you're just not making up numbers out of thin air, but they will grant the loan based upon the revenue that you're going to be generating from it. Mm-hmm. Again, traditionally, you're going to see higher interest rates. It's more of a commercial type structure and product, but it's an option. Yep. And then, get creative for deals, right? We know so many people that want to get into this space. So if you really want to do a deal and you have a friend or you've got friends that, you want to invest together, don't be afraid to do that too.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of that actually the past couple of years in New Hampshire, Kendall and I, with our real estate business, just people who are banding together to be able to afford something as an investment together. And it's smart. You have half the liability if you're joining with another family, half the initial investment. Obviously, you're making half of the revenue, but if that is what your comfort level is, and if that's what you can afford, it's a smart option, because we do expect that home values will continue to appreciate. And at worst, if there's some terrible falling out or some awful financial burden, you could always sell it. Mm-hmm. You just have to be careful with drawing up the right, agreement up front so that everyone has the right expectations of what's going to happen with the property.
Yeah. I think, again, you could probably do a whole separate podcast on that, picking a partner, right? So you gotta be very careful with it. But if you pick the right person, you have good, clear expectations going in, then you should be okay. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest challenges I see most people do is they spend way too much on the property and they don't leave any money left over to do all these little things that we're talking about.
We just had this happen with one of my clients who could afford a property at a good purchase price, but they did not have the money left over in order to fix it up.
Yes.
So as part of the financing, if you're a buyer who can afford to buy, say, a $700,000 property in New Hampshire, how do you recommend going about that?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. So like we talked about a little bit earlier in our discussion, right? You got to leave money to upgrade the property. Mm-hmm. You can't just put a property on the market that is standard like everybody else, because you're going to struggle with the revenue. So if you have the ability and you're approved, say up to $700,000, I would say give yourself a little bit of spending cash in the back end for capital improvements, for design, for decor, for the hot tub. Make sure you have enough that you don't put yourself in a position where think about a primary home where you bought this beautiful home and you're house poor, right? There's nothing furnishing it. There's nothing in it. There's no dining. You have this beautiful dining room, brand new home, but you don't have enough money to buy a really nice dining room set. So really make sure that you have the money carved out after closing to not only take care of the capital expenses that you may have identified in the pre-buy, but also so that you're able to set up a really nice design, decor with amenities, all of it. And as a general rule of thumb, what we typically use as a benchmark is about $10,000 a bedroom for a brand new furnishing of a home. And that doesn't mean you're going to spend $10,000 in a bedroom. What that means is that a 3-bedroom would take about $30,000 to furnish from scratch, complete the whole home, which includes like your kitchen items. It'll include your towels, it's going to include linens. It's going to include making it a home. Now, of course, that can fluctuate a little bit up. That can fluctuate a little bit down, depending upon to the degree of which, you go for a luxury, versus non-luxury.
How turnkey it already
is. If you can incorporate maybe some furniture that was already left, as long as it's in good shape, don't try to push that. What I've seen, when I look at homes that are for sale in the Mount Washington Valley, specifically, when I see that it's being sold with furniture, I'm like, most times I'm like, just take it with you. I look at the furniture, I'm like, it's not going to rent. I don't want that.
Like a cabin.
Yeah, exactly. So make sure that if they leave the furniture, you can actually use it in the home that we personally purchased. They were open to leaving everything. We kept some. But we said on other things, like, no, you can take that. Yeah. I don't even want to deal with that because when I get in, then I have to get rid of it. Just take it with you. Yep.
And so with having the nest egg, once you move in order to purchase the furnishing and fix the inside up, there's different ways that we could do that as a buying agent. For example, if you're able to afford $700,000, it may make more sense for you to offer 700. We say you feel comfortable at 680, but you can afford 700. If you offer 680, you're only saving maybe $100 a month on your payment, $80 a month, something like that. But if you offer the 700,000, but you ask for $20,000 back towards your closing costs, then you have $20,000 to put towards your home.
So happy you said that, because I'm seeing that happen more in deals right now for short-term rentals, or around that, a seller concession. Like, let's say the asking price is 680. I'll give you 680, but I want 20 back at the table.
Yeah.
Right. Like we see that too.
It's almost like taking a loan out with yourself. You're increasing your monthly payment by a little bit, but you're getting $20,000 up front to use for what you need to start making money now.
Yes.
And so that's just something that we do with a lot of our clients that are really tight on closing costs, because a lot of the times with single families or with these investment properties, you're purchasing at the very top of your budget because that's how the market is right now. And most people don't have the funds after closing to do really anything. So you got to be creative these days.
Absolutely.
And so I know that you've touched upon a little bit that you go around the country and you speak with other people who may want to buy investment properties or that are managing investment properties. In your opinion, what is the ideal buyer for a short-term rental property?
I'm glad you asked it. It's anyone. It's absolutely anyone. In the consulting work that I do, I coach for a national mastermind program in addition to the work that we do with Stay Space. I mean, we'll see, as you can imagine, doctors, lawyers, high income earners, right? But then we'll see nurses, cops, teachers, right? Really all walks of life, different creeds, colors, religions, right? So there really is, there's no one right person. Anyone who is interested in, purchasing a second home, whether for investment or for their family, should absolutely do it. And don't be intimidated by it. There's tons of good information that's available. There's tons of people that are available that are, in my experience, I find that most people are willing to lend out a helping hand. You just have to ask. Very few people are, stingy with their time and their information. If they are, you probably don't want to know them anyway, right? So, certainly anyone that's, watching this, always feel free to reach out to me. But if you have a friend, a neighbor, or someone that you know of has been in this space, don't be afraid to bring it up and ask about it, because anyone can get into this business and buy a home for investment or to enjoy, or a mixture of both. And I think one of the saddest things that I see are people who don't do it because the fear of jumping. Yeah. Right. The fear of not knowing. And that's really for anything in life, not just in this. So I hope whoever is listening to me right now, if you're kind of on the fringe, you're like, I've been thinking about it, just go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. I love that. So if people are considering getting a short-term rental or just want to learn more about it, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah. So our website, stayspace.net. We have a very good social media presence on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm sure we can link the tags to that.
Put it in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you. If I'm being completely honest, I'm not a great social media person. Ashley is, and we've got a great team that helps out with that. But if you reach out to our social media or you reach out on our website, it will get to me. And then for me, my email address is really simple. It's Darryl, Darryl, @stayspace.net.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for being on today. I really appreciate it. And I hope that everyone who listened to this got to, really gain some knowledge about short-term rentals, and hopefully it inspires them to go find their next investment property.
Thank you for having me.